popular influencer aimed her phone at the stoic Sentinel, promising her followers a legendary prank. But in this sacred place, some lines aren't meant to be crossed, and the price for viral fame would be devastating. The air on this crisp October afternoon carried a solemn weight. At Arlington National Cemetery, the sun cast long, reverent shadows that stretched like fingers across the immaculate rows of white headstones. A gentle wind rustled the golden leaves, whispering through the ancient oaks in a hushed tribute. This was hallowed ground, a silent testament to the cost of freedom. At its heart, the tomb of the unknown soldier gleamed, a stark white altar under the autumn sky. Among the quiet assembly of tourists stood Chloe Vance, a 22-year-old whose life was curated for the screen. With her platinum blonde hair, designer sunglasses perched on her head, and a brightly colored jacket that defied the somber mood, she was a splash of neon in a watercolor painting. She adjusted the grip on her phone, a wide, practiced smile plastered on her face for the thousands watching her live stream. Her boyfriend and reluctant cameraman, Leo, trailed behind her, his expression a mixture of anxiety and resignation. "This is going to be epic, Leo," Chloe whispered, her voice a conspiratorial hiss. "The Don't Mess with the Guard challenge. It's trending like crazy. We'll hit 1 million views by midnight." Leo scanned the faces in the crowd. A family holding hands, an elderly man in a wheelchair draped in a military blanket, a group of students listening intently to their teacher. "I don't know, Chloe," he murmured, keeping the second camera steady. "This place, it feels different. Maybe we should just do a respectful vlog." "Boring," Chloe scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. "Nobody goes viral by being boring. People want drama, they want edge. Trust me." 20 yards away, Sergeant Isaac Ike Riley stood his post. At 30, his face was a study in disciplined composure, but a faint, silvery scar, almost invisible, cut a fine line near his right temple. A silent souvenir from a sun-scorched valley in Afghanistan. His uniform was a masterpiece of precision. Creases sharp enough to cut glass, white gloves immaculate, the M14 rifle held with a familiarity that spoke of countless hours of drill. His gaze, shielded by dark sunglasses, was fixed forward, but his awareness was total. He had seen influencers like Chloe before, mistaking solemnity for a stage. His duty was not to them. It was to the men entombed before him, and to the promise he'd made to honor their sacrifice. Nearby, Mr. Arthur Chun, a 70-year-old with eyes that held the quiet wisdom of a lifetime, stood with his hands clasped behind his back. A small pin on his lapel, a symbol of his service in the Korean War, was the only ornament on his simple coat. He watched the ceremony with a quiet reverence, his thoughts on friends who never came home. His gaze drifted to Chloe, and a subtle frown tightened his lips. He had seen her brand of casual disrespect before, and it always left a bitter taste. "Okay, stream. We're live at Arlington," Chloe announced, her voice artificially bright, cutting through the reverent quiet. A few heads turned, their expressions ranging from curiosity to annoyance. "And we found the world's most serious statue. Let's see if we can make him blink." Leo winced. "Chloe, keep your voice down." "It's for the content, Leo," she shot back, a flicker of irritation in her eyes. She began to walk along the edge of the restricted area, her phone held high. She started posing, treating Sergeant Riley as nothing more than an elaborate background prop. She blew a kiss towards him, then formed a heart with her hands, framing his stoic figure within it. Her followers' comments flooded the screen with laughing emojis and dares. "Look at him, you guys," she narrated, her tone dripping with mockery. "He's like a real-life G.I. Joe doll, fresh out of the box. Do you think he's even real?" Mr. Chin's frown deepened. He had watched young men, barely out of their teens, stand with that same unwavering discipline on frozen hillsides half a world away. That posture wasn't for show. It was a shield forged in hardship. "She has no idea," he muttered to his late wife, a habit he'd never broken. "No idea what that uniform represents." The atmosphere was shifting. The initial amusement from a few teenagers in the crowd curdled into discomfort. Parents began to quietly steer their children away, sensing the invisible line that was being crossed. A father leaned down to his son and whispered, "That man is a real soldier, son. He's here to protect the memory of heroes. We don't bother him." From a discreet distance, Park Ranger Maya Singh observed the situation. Her posture was relaxed, but her eyes were sharp. She'd seen this scenario play out 100 times. Tourists, caught up in the novelty, forgetting where they were. But Chloe's performance felt different. It wasn't born of ignorance, but of a deliberate, performative arrogance. Singh's hand rested near the radio on her hip. Undeterred, Chloe grew bolder, feeding off the digital encouragement from her followers. She began to mimic a slow-motion, seductive walk along the chain barrier, turning to wink at her phone with Sergeant Riley perfectly framed over her shoulder. "He's probably so bored," she said to her audience. "We're just adding a little spice to his day." "You're welcome, Sergeant." Behind his sunglasses, Sergeant Riley's jaw remained set. His training was a fortress, built to withstand any distraction. He focused on the rhythmic count in his head, the 21 steps, the 21-second pause. Each movement was a prayer for the unknowns. But he could feel the disrespect radiating from the girl. It was a dissonant note in the sacred symphony of this place, a grating scratch on a hallowed record. He had stood firm through sandstorms in Kandahar. He would stand firm through this. The digital applause fueled Chloe's audacity. "Okay, guys, challenge accepted," she declared to her phone. "Someone just dared me to do a uniform inspection. Let's see if he's up to code." Before Leo could protest, she ducked under the velvet rope, ignoring the small sign that clearly marked the area as restricted. The collective gasp from the crowd was sharp and audible. "Chloe, get back here." Leo hissed, his camera wavering. "You're gonna get arrested." "Relax," she whispered back, never breaking eye contact with her phone's lens. "It's for the views. They'll just give me a warning." She strutted towards Sergeant Riley, stopping just out of arm's reach. She circled him slowly, like a predator examining its prey, her phone capturing every angle. "Wow, look at these shoes," she exclaimed, pointing her phone downwards. "They're shinier than my future. My followers are asking what polish you use, Sergeant. Can we get a brand deal?" The air crackled with tension. Mr. Chun took an involuntary step forward, his hands clenched into fists. This was no longer just disrespect. It was a brazen desecration. That was the final straw for Ranger Singh. She moved swiftly, her steps purposeful. "Ma'am," she said, her voice calm but laced with an authority that was impossible to ignore. "You are in a restricted area. I need you to step back behind the barrier immediately." Chloe spun around, her face a mask of manufactured innocence. "Oh my gosh, I am so sorry, officer," she gushed, placing a hand over her heart. "I was just so moved by his dedication. I want to get a closer look to show my followers what a true American hero looks like. Total respect, I promise." Ranger Singh's eyes were unblinking. She did not acknowledge the apology. Behind the barrier, now, with a dramatic sigh for her audience, Chloe complied, stepping back into the public area. She gave the ranger a dazzling smile. "Thank you for your service," she said, her tone saccharine. As soon as Singh had stepped back to resume her watch, Chloe turned to her phone and rolled her eyes in an exaggerated gesture. "Well, that was a total buzzkill," she muttered under her breath. "The fun police are out in full force today. But don't you worry, Stream. She didn't say I couldn't finish my inspection from here. And I saved the best part for last." She reached into her designer backpack, a sly, triumphant smirk playing on her lips. Leo's face went pale as he saw what she was pulling out. It wasn't a weapon, but in this sacred space, it might as well have been. What emerged from Chloe's bag was a sleek, polished metal flask, the kind sold in high-end boutiques for a small fortune. It gleamed under the October sun, looking both expensive and utterly out of place. She held it up for her live stream, wiggling it so the light caught its smooth surface. "Every soldier gets thirsty, right?" she said, her voice dropping into a conspiratorial whisper. "Our boy has been standing here for ages. I think he deserves a little refreshment. Hydration is key, you guys." The comments on her screen exploded. Most were a mix of shock and encouragement, a digital mob egging her on. Leo finally found his voice, a frantic, desperate plea. Troy, no, don't. That's not a prop, that's a person. A soldier. You can't do this. This is a federal crime. It's just water, Leo. It's a prank, she snapped, her patience with him gone. Her focus was entirely on the rising viewer count on her screen. She was on the verge of creating her masterpiece, the video that would cement her fame. Nothing else mattered. Mr. Chin saw the flask and understood her intent instantly. His body moved before his mind could fully process it. Young lady, stop, he shouted, his voice cracking with an old man's fury. Have you no shame? But his words were lost in the bubble of Chloe's self-absorption. She saw only the screen, the comments, the promise of digital glory. She raised the flask, aiming it carefully. Her face was alight with a manic grin, the perfect thumbnail for the video. This one's for the algorithm, she yelled, a final defiant cry. 3, 2, 1. A sharp, powerful stream of clear liquid shot from a cleverly concealed nozzle on the flask. It flew through the crisp autumn air and struck Sergeant Isaac Riley square in the face. For a single, horrifying heartbeat, time seemed to stop. The water hit his sunglasses with a sound that was shockingly loud in the sudden, profound silence. It splashed across his cheeks and dripped from his jawline, darkening the pristine navy blue collar of his uniform. Droplets clung to the polished metals on his chest. Medals earned with blood and bravery in a place Chloe couldn't even imagine. The crowd's collective gasp seemed to suck all the air out of Arlington. Phones were lowered. A child started to cry. Leo's camera dropped to his side, his face a mask of horror. Chloe held her pose for a moment, her triumphant smile frozen on her face. She was waiting for the laugh track, for the applause. But all that came was a heavy, suffocating silence. The silence stretched, thick and condemning. Chloe's smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of confusion, then dawning fear. The digital cheers from her phone felt a million miles away. In the real world, she was surrounded by a sea of shocked and disgusted faces. What? She said, her voice suddenly small and brittle. It's just water, people. It was a joke. Chill out. For a long moment, Sergeant Riley did not move. He remained a statue, water streaming down his face. But behind the dark lenses, something shifted. The cold shock of the water on his skin was a sensory trigger, a key unlocking a door he kept firmly bolted. For a split second, he wasn't in Arlington. He was back in the Karangal Valley, the cold sweat of fear and exertion trickling down his face, the air thick with dust and the metallic scent of blood. He saw the face of a friend, a boy from Iowa who never made it home. He remembered the promise they all made to each other, to live a life worthy of the fallen. This uniform, he thought, the clarity of the purpose cutting through his shock, this ground, it is for them. Then he moved. It wasn't a move born of anger, but of pure, unadulterated purpose. It was swift, economical, and utterly decisive. In a single fluid motion, he took one precise step forward, closing the distance. His white glove hand closed around Chloe's wrist. The grip wasn't brutal, but it was as unyielding as iron. With his other hand, he plucked the metal flask from her grasp, as if taking a toy from a child. His voice, when it came, was not a shout. It was low, controlled, and carried the chilling authority of a battlefield command. It cut through the silence like a surgeon's scalpel. "This is not a stage," he said, his eyes locking onto hers through his sunglasses. "And I am not a prop." Chloe froze, the full weight of her transgression crashing down on her. The color drained from her face. I was just," she stammered, her bravado shattering into a million pieces. In an instant, Ranger Singh was there, flanked by 2 other Rangers. Her expression was grim. "Sergeant," she said, her voice professional but firm. "We have it from here." Sergeant Riley released Chloe's wrist and, with a precision that was breathtaking, stepped back to his post, resuming his flawless stance as if nothing had happened. But his presence now dominated the entire plaza. As the Rangers began to escort a trembling Chloe away, Mr. Chun stepped into her path. His face was etched with a deep, sorrowful anger. "My friends died for the ground you stand on," he said, his voice shaking with the effort of control. They gave their lives so you could have the freedom to be a fool, but they did not give you the right to dance on their graves. Chloe finally broke. A sob escaped her lips, tears of shame and terror streaming down her face. She looked at the faces around her, not of fans, but of judges, and saw nothing but contempt. From his post, Sergeant Riley spoke one last time, his voice carrying across the silent plaza, a final, powerful lesson. "We stand guard for them," he said, his voice clear and steady. "For the soldiers who gave their names, so the unknowns would never be forgotten. That is what this uniform means." His words hung in the autumn air, an irrefutable truth, a devastating indictment of an act of thoughtless cruelty. In the sterile quiet of the Arlington security office, the reality of the consequences became brutally clear. Chloe and Leo sat in silence as Ranger Singh explained the situation. Federal charges for interfering with a government ceremony and trespassing on a restricted federal site. A fine that would dwarf any revenue her video might have generated. And a lifetime ban from every national cemetery in the United States. Chloe's phone, now confiscated as evidence, was a dead weight in an evidence bag, her viral moment, transforming into a digital monument to her own infamy. The video did go viral, but not in the way Chloe had dreamed. News outlets across the country picked it up, not as a prank, but as a symbol of a deeper cultural sickness. It ignited a fierce national debate about the boundaries of influencer culture, the erosion of respect, and the responsibilities that come with a platform. Chloe Vance became a household name overnight, not as a star, but as a cautionary tale. Days later, Mr. Chun returned to the tomb. He stood for a long time, watching the unwavering Sentinel. He then quietly placed a single white carnation at the base of the plaza steps before turning to leave. His duty as a witness and as a guardian of memory fulfilled. Sergeant Riley finished his rotation. Back in the quiet solitude of the barracks, away from the eyes of the world, he methodically cleaned his uniform, removing every trace of the incident. He took out his medals, their weight familiar in his hands, and polished them until they shone. In the soft light, the faint scar near his temple seemed to catch the light, a quiet reminder of the world beyond the ceremony. The seasons would change, but the watch at the tomb would not. A new guard now stood on the plaza, his steps as measured, his gaze as fixed as Sergeant Riley's had been. The crowd still came, but something had shifted. They stood a little further back. Their voices were a little more hushed. A young girl tugged on her father's sleeve and asked why the soldier never smiled. And her father, instead of shushing her, knelt down and explained, his voice filled with a newfound reverence, what it meant to stand watch over heroes. Chloe Vance came to Arlington seeking to be seen, and left with a lesson in what it means to see. She learned that some things are not for sale, not for views, and not for likes. They're simply to be honored. If you believe that honor, courage, and sacrifice still matter, comment respect below to show your support for those who stand watch. Subscribe for more stories that remind us of what truly matters. And click the video on your screen to see another story of duty and a choice that will leave you breathless.